My name is Jason, and everything about my life was supposed to be perfect. At least, that's what everyone thought. From the outside, Susan and I had it all. We'd been married for 6 years, lived in a cozy house in the suburbs, and were finally talking about starting a family. If you looked at us, you'd think we were the poster couple for happiness. But behind the smiles and the white picket fence, things were starting to feel off. I remember the first time we talked about having kids. It was a quiet evening in our living room, the kind of night where the world outside just seemed to slow down. We were sitting on the couch, Susan's head on my shoulder, both of us wrapped in the warmth of a shared moment. We'd been through a lot together. Susan had always been the steady, calming force in my life, and I tried to be the same for her. So when she told me she was ready to start a family, it felt like the natural next step. "I think we're ready, don't you?" she asked, her voice full of hope. I could see the excitement in her eyes. And I felt it too. The thought of having a child together, of building something bigger than ourselves, was thrilling. It was the kind of dream I never thought I'd have, but here it was. This was the final piece in our life puzzle. I took her hand, squeezing it. "Yeah, I think we are." And just like that, the plan was set. We'd talked about it 100 times before, but now it felt different. More real. Susan was ready, and so was I. Despite my job keeping me on the road more often than not, I told myself that I could handle it. We could handle it. Things started to fall into place. We began redecorating the guest room, turning it into a nursery. I adjusted my work schedule, taking more time off to be home. Even when work got hectic and I had to travel for days on end, I made sure to stay connected, calling her every night before bed. We'd even started to pick out names, though we couldn't quite settle on one. The day Susan told me she was pregnant, I nearly lost it. The way she told me was sweet, the kind of thing you see in movies. I'd just come back from a week-long trip, and as soon as I stepped through the door, she handed me a small gift. It was wrapped in a soft pink ribbon. Inside was a tiny onesie, the kind you'd buy for a newborn. It had Dad's #1 fan printed on it in bold, cheerful letters. I stared at it, confused at first. Then it hit me. "You're pregnant?" I asked, my voice breaking. I didn't even know what to say. Susan smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. "I've been trying to tell you all week. I wanted it to be a surprise." I pulled her close, my heart racing. I could feel the excitement building inside me, like a tidal wave. This was it. This was the dream we'd talked about. This was the next chapter in our perfect life. I promised myself that I'd be the best father, the best husband. I'd make sure our family was everything we ever dreamed of. But there were things, small things, that neither of us really acknowledged. I was gone a lot for work, and Susan, despite being the incredible woman she was, couldn't help but feel lonely at times. I knew it, but I thought we were strong enough to weather it. Our love was enough to make everything work. And when she told me she was pregnant, I thought, this is it. This is the final piece. There was nothing that could tear us apart. I didn't know, back then, that things were already starting to shift beneath the surface. I didn't know that the cracks in our perfect illusion were just beginning to show. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines and the faint rustle of nurses outside. Susan lay in the bed, looking exhausted but elated, her face glowing as she cradled our newborn daughter, Connie. I was sitting next to her, my heart full as I watched Susan gently nurse Connie. It was a sight I had dreamed about for months, and now, here it was, a reality. I leaned over and kissed Susan's forehead. "You're amazing," I whispered. She smiled, a small, tired smile, but it was enough to make my chest swell with pride. This was everything we had talked about. This was the culmination of our perfect life. Connie was here, our little girl, and our family was complete. But even as I held Susan's hand, a nagging thought began to worm its way into my mind. It started small, just a whisper at the edge of my consciousness. A flicker of doubt that I couldn't shake. I had been here before, had I not? So many nights away for work, too many missed moments. Susan had been so strong through the pregnancy, and I had been there for the big moments. But what about all the little things? Could I make up for those? I shook my head, trying to push the thought away. Everything was fine. I was home now. I was going to be the father she needed. I had promised her that. The door to the room opened, and a nurse entered, holding a clipboard. She smiled at us, her eyes warm. "Just need to check on a few things, and then we'll get the paperwork started," she said, her voice gentle. I nodded, and Susan smiled in return, still gazing down at Connie. It was such a beautiful moment. Everything seemed perfect. But then the woman from the administration stepped in behind the nurse. Miss Jenkins. I recognized her from when I'd arrived earlier. She had been the one to go over some of the hospital's policies with us. Now she was holding the birth certificate paperwork, ready to get our signatures. We just need a few details to finalize the birth certificate, she said with a smile, walking toward the bed. I looked at her, distracted for a moment by how tired I was, how overwhelmed by the sheer joy of becoming a father. It all felt so unreal. But as I turned my head back to Susan, I felt a strange sense of unease. A quiet voice inside me began to ask questions I didn't want to hear. I watched Susan for a moment longer, watching how she tenderly adjusted Connie in her arms. And then the thought crossed my mind. What if she wasn't really mine? The voice in my head mocked me for the thought, but I couldn't help it. It was there. It was like a shadow hovering just out of reach, something I couldn't shake. The room felt smaller. The air seemed heavier. Miss Jenkins was speaking to Susan, but all I could hear was the thudding of my own heartbeat. Jason. Susan's voice broke through the fog in my mind. Jason, are you okay? I blinked, suddenly aware that everyone in the room was looking at me. Miss Jenkins had a confused expression on her face, while the nurse was still standing by the door, waiting for something. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Yeah, I'm fine. I looked at the paperwork Miss Jenkins was holding in her hands, the same birth certificate forms we had briefly discussed earlier. And without thinking, the words spilled out of me before I could stop them. We should probably wait for the DNA test results before we finish that, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Just to be sure. You know, to make sure I'm really the father. The room went deathly quiet. Susan's face froze. Miss Jenkins blinked, her eyes wide in disbelief. The nurse stepped back, as if she wasn't sure whether to leave or stay. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own breath. Susan's face contorted with confusion, then hurt, and then a flash of anger. What did you just say? She asked, her voice trembling. I mean it, I said, my voice cold, almost like a challenge. I want to be sure. Let's just get the DNA results before we finalize anything. Susan's face drained of color, her grip on Connie tightening as she pulled her closer to her chest. Her mother, who had been sitting quietly at the foot of the bed, let out a sharp breath, her face hardening as she stared at me. Her mother's voice came next, loud and furious. How dare you? How dare you say something like that? After everything, after all she's been through to give you this child, you question her? I felt like I'd been slapped across the face. The anger in Susan's mother's eyes was more than I had ever seen from her. But it was my own reaction that made my blood run cold. I wasn't backing down. I felt it deep in my gut. I had to know. I had to make sure. I'm not backing down, I said, my voice colder now. If this isn't my child, I'm not going to raise someone else's. Susan's voice wavered, full of disbelief. Jason, you can't possibly think. I need to know the truth, Susan, I said, cutting her off. I need to know if she's really mine. The silence in the room was suffocating. I looked at my mother-in-law, who seemed just as shocked as Susan. Even Miss Jenkins was standing there awkwardly, unsure of how to proceed. Susan's eyes welled with tears. You think I would lie to you? She whispered, her voice breaking. I looked at her, guilt gnawing at my insides, but the words kept spilling out. I don't know, Susan. I don't know anymore. Her mother stood up, fury in her eyes. You have no right to do this. None of you have the right. I didn't even hear the rest of her words. My mind was clouded with doubt, fear, and rage, all swirling together into one terrible storm. My wife, the woman I thought I knew so well, was suddenly a stranger. I'll do whatever it takes to find out, I muttered, feeling the distance growing between us. The truth, it seemed, was the one thing I couldn't avoid. But it had come at a cost I hadn't prepared for. The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel the weight of Susan's mother's glare, the shock in Susan's eyes, and the searing silence that filled the space. It was like everything I thought I knew about my life was falling apart before my eyes. Susan was still holding Connie close to her chest, as if shielding her from what I had just said. Her fingers trembled slightly as she stroked Connie's hair, her face a mixture of disbelief and hurt. Her lips quivered, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. Susan, I started, my voice softer now, though the tension was still there, thick and unyielding. I need to know. I need to be sure. Her eyes locked onto mine. the pain in them cutting through me like a knife. "How could you even ask me that?" she whispered, her voice barely above a tremor. "You think I would?" She shook her head, cutting herself off, as if she couldn't believe what I had just suggested. "I don't know what to think anymore," I said quietly, the words tasting bitter as I spoke them. "I don't know if I can trust anything right now." Susan's mother, Tony, stepped forward, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "How dare you?" she snapped, her voice shaking with anger. "How dare you say something like that to her? To me, to our family? After everything she's done, everything she's been through. This is how you repay her? With doubt?" "I didn't mean it like that," I said quickly, my own voice rising defensively. But as soon as I said it, I realized that the damage was already done. The doubt had already planted itself in my mind, and no amount of backpedaling could undo what had been said. "Then what did you mean, Jason?" Susan's voice broke through the chaos, the hurt in it more than I could bear. She was standing now, her arms cradling Connie protectively. "You've just shattered everything. Everything." I couldn't find the words. My mouth felt dry, like I had swallowed something sharp. I had never seen Susan look at me like this before, like I was a stranger, like I had become someone she couldn't trust. "Tell me, Jason," she demanded, her eyes hard. "Why would you think that? What made you think that I'd—" She paused, her throat working as if the words physically hurt her to say. "What made you think I'd cheat on you?" I froze, the words lodged in my throat. I hadn't meant it like that, but hearing her say it out loud, it hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I don't know." I stammered, my hands trembling. "I don't know why. It just doesn't feel right. I've been away so much. I haven't been here for you like I should have been. And now this, and I just need to know. I don't know what else to say." "You think I cheated on you?" Susan repeated, her voice barely a whisper, like she was trying to make sense of what I had said. She shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "You think I could do that to you? After everything?" "I don't know what to think anymore, Susan," I shouted, the frustration and fear overwhelming me. "I've been gone too much. You've been alone too much. And I don't know how this happened. I don't know how we got here." Susan turned away, her back rigid, her shoulders shaking. I could feel the gap widening between us, like a chasm I couldn't cross. My chest felt tight, like there wasn't enough air in the room to fill it. I hadn't meant to hurt her. I hadn't meant to do this. But now that I had, I didn't know how to undo it. Her mother, still standing beside us, let out a harsh laugh that rang out in the silence of the room. "You are unbelievable, Jason. Unbelievable." Tony spat, her face flushed with anger. "After everything Susan has given you, after everything we've all done for you, you throw it all away with one ridiculous accusation? Do you even care about her?" I flinched as if the words had physically struck me. "Of course I care," I said quickly. "Of course I do. I swallowed hard, struggling to get the words out. I just need to know the truth." "The truth." Susan's voice cut through the air, her words raw with emotion. She turned back to face me, her face red, her eyes blazing with hurt. "The truth? The truth is I've been loyal to you. The truth is, I've done nothing but love you, Jason. And you think this is what I deserve? To be doubted like this?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. What could I say? Nothing I said could make this right. Nothing could undo what I had just done. Susan's mother stepped closer, her expression hard. "You're not the only one who's been through things, Jason. Do you think this was easy for her? Do you think it was easy for me? I've watched her fight through every single day, trying to make things work with you, while you've been off doing God knows what. And now this. Now you want to tear everything down?" "I don't want to tear it down," I said, my voice thick with regret. I just wanted to be sure." "Sure," Susan repeated, her voice growing louder. "You don't need proof, Jason. You need trust. And right now, I don't think you have any of that left for me. So why don't you just leave?" The words hit me like a slap to the face. "What?" I choked out, my heart thundering in my chest. "You heard me," Susan said coldly. "Leave. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep fighting for something that's already been destroyed." I stood there, frozen, as the weight of what she had said sank in. "Susan, please," I started, but my voice faltered. "I don't want to hear it, Jason," she snapped. "I'm done." And with that, she turned away, her back to me as if I didn't exist. I stood there in the quiet, the silence of the room ringing in my ears, 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind. none of them making any sense. My chest felt hollow, like everything I had worked for was slipping away. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I hadn't meant to hurt her. I hadn't meant to destroy everything we had. But somehow I had. And now I was left standing there, with nothing but the cold silence between us. Nothing but the broken pieces of a life I thought was perfect. The days that followed were a blur. The kind of blur where nothing feels real and everything feels wrong. I stayed in a hotel for a couple of nights, not sure where else to go. My phone buzzed constantly with missed calls from Susan, from her mother, from my own mother. But I couldn't bring myself to answer. I didn't want to hear their voices. I didn't want to hear them tell me how much I had messed up, how much I had destroyed. In the quiet of my hotel room, I tried to piece together what had happened. I kept telling myself that I hadn't meant it, that I never should have said it. But now it was out there. The seed of doubt I had planted between us had already begun to sprout, and no amount of apologizing or pleading was going to make it go away. I called Steve one night, hoping for some advice, someone to tell me what to do. He had been a friend for years, one of the few people I trusted with my life. He knew about my marriage, the good and the bad, and I needed someone to help me make sense of all this. "What the hell happened, man?" Steve asked after I explained the situation, his voice sharp, but with a hint of concern. "Jason, you don't just accuse your wife of that kind of thing and think everything's going to be fine." "I know," I muttered, my fingers clenching around the edge of the phone. I don't even know what came over me. It was like I couldn't help it. I was so scared, Steve. Scared that I wasn't going to be enough for her or for Connie. That I was just going to keep failing. "Yeah, but you didn't fail, man. You doubted her. That's what you did. And you can't just undo that. It's not going to be easy. You need to fix this, but first, you need to figure out why you did it. What made you go there?" I didn't have an answer for him. I didn't know why it had come out of me like that. I just knew that it had, and it had shattered everything I thought was solid. The next few days were a mix of numbness and regret. I could feel the distance between Susan and me like a heavy fog. I hadn't seen her or Connie since that night. I hadn't been able to bring myself to face her. I kept replaying that moment over and over, hearing her words in my head. "You think I cheated on you?" And it felt like I had lost everything I loved in a single moment. I finally returned home a week later. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I had to face it. I had to face her. I had to try to make things right, if that was even possible anymore. When I walked through the door, the house felt empty. The silence was suffocating. I called out for Susan, but there was no response. I moved through the living room, my eyes landing on the nursery, the small room we had spent so much time preparing. Everything was the same. Nothing had changed, but it all felt different. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table, her hands folded in front of her, her eyes red from crying. When she saw me, her face went hard, like a mask she had carefully crafted just for me. "Jason," she said softly, almost as if she were speaking to a stranger. "We need to talk." I nodded, taking a deep breath. I had been expecting this moment, but nothing could have prepared me for it. "I know," I whispered, taking a step closer. She didn't get up. She didn't move. She just sat there, her gaze fixed on the table. "Do you know what you've done?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I said, my throat tight. I know what I said was unforgivable. But Susan, please, I need you to understand. I was just scared. Scared of not being enough. Scared of failing you and Connie. I thought I had to be perfect, that if I wasn't, everything would fall apart." She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and disappointment. "Jason, I thought we were stronger than that. I thought we could handle anything, as long as we were together. But now I don't even know who you are anymore." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I didn't have anything to say. I didn't know how to fix it. How could I fix it when I had caused all this damage? "I never meant to hurt you," I said, my voice breaking. "I never wanted to doubt you. But I did. And now I don't know how to take it back. I don't know how to make you believe that I love you, that I love Connie." "You should have never doubted me," she said, her voice cracking. "I've been through everything with you, Jason. I've stood by you when things were hard, when things weren't perfect. But now I don't know if I can trust you. You've broken something in me that I'm not sure can ever be fixed." The words stung, and I felt the weight of them sink deep into my chest. I had failed her in the worst way possible. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I can be the man you need," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "I'll go to counseling. I'll work on myself. I'll do anything. Just please, don't give up on me. Susan stood up then, her movements stiff, her eyes clouded with emotion. I don't know if I can just pretend that everything is fine, Jason. You've hurt me, and I don't know if I can forgive you. Not right now. I felt the ground beneath me shift, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to do. I had no answers. No magic words to make this right. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, I said quietly, my voice full of regret. But I'll wait for you. I'll wait for you to decide if you can ever trust me again. And if you can't, then I'll accept it. But I'm not giving up on us. Not on our family. She didn't respond. She just looked at me with eyes that seemed so far away, like she was already somewhere else, far beyond my reach. I'm going to give you space, I said, my voice low. Take all the time you need. I'm here. Whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here. With that, I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my heart heavy, knowing that I had no idea what was coming next. Would we find our way back to each other? Or was this the end of everything we had built? The uncertainty weighed on me, but one thing was clear. I had a long road ahead of me, and I didn't know if I could make it alone. The days that followed felt like a slow, agonizing stretch of time. Susan and I hardly spoke. I stayed at the house, but it was as if we were living in separate worlds. She spent most of her time in the nursery with Connie, and I spent mine pacing the house, trying to piece together the wreckage of what had been. I didn't know what to do. Every time I tried to reach out to her, I was met with silence. Every time I thought I had a way forward, the weight of the things I had said came crashing back down. It was as though I couldn't escape the guilt. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to take it all back. But the damage felt too great. The walls between us felt too thick. One night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. The screen lit up with missed calls from my mother, from Susan's mom, from Steve. I hadn't answered any of them. I didn't know what to say to any of them. My life had become a blur of endless thoughts, regrets, and what-ifs, and none of them seemed to make any difference. I reached out to Steve, hoping for some clarity. I needed someone who could tell me what to do, someone who could offer guidance. He had been through his own struggles with relationships, and I figured he would understand what I was going through. Jason, man, you've got to talk to her, Steve said, his voice heavy on the other end of the line. You've got to stop running from this. This isn't something you can fix on your own. You need her to know that you're there, that you're present in this, and that you want to rebuild, not just apologize. I don't know if that's even possible anymore, Steve, I admitted, my voice tight with frustration. I keep thinking that if I give her time, things will get better. But every day that passes, it feels like we're moving further apart. I don't know if she can even look at me the same way again. There was a long pause on the other end of the phone, and then Steve spoke, his voice calm but firm. Jason, you can't fix this by yourself. And you can't fix it by waiting for things to magically get better. You need to show her that you're serious about changing, about being there for her, not just as a husband, but as a partner, as someone who's willing to put in the work. She needs to see that. I closed my eyes, rubbing the bridge of my nose. I don't know if I can get that back, I muttered. I don't even know if she wants that from me anymore. I get it, Steve said quietly. But you've got to try. If you love her, you need to show her that you do, through your actions. Not just words. Actions, Jason. If you don't, then you have to accept the fact that this might be the end. The weight of his words sank in, the reality of the situation dawning on me. Steve was right. I couldn't wait forever for things to magically fix themselves. I had to do something. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of resolve. I had made a decision, and I knew what I had to do. I walked into the living room and found Susan sitting on the couch, holding Connie in her arms. She looked up at me, her eyes tired but wary, like she wasn't sure what to expect from me anymore. I'm not going to keep doing this, I said, my voice steady but thick with emotion. I'm not going to keep waiting around for things to just fix themselves. I need you to understand that I am sorry and that I want to change. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I know it's not just about what I said, it's about what I didn't do. I wasn't here for you the way I should have been, and that's on me. Susan didn't speak for a long moment. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and pain. Then, finally, she set Connie down in the playpen beside her and stood up, folding her arms across her chest. Do you really think you can just say that and make everything better? She asked, her voice calm but full of disbelief. Do you think you can just fix this with a couple of words, Jason? No, I said softly, shaking my head. I don't think I can. but I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to put in the effort. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." She shook her head slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. "And what if that's not enough? What if I'm done? What if I don't want to keep trying?" The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. I hadn't expected that. I had hoped that by showing her I was willing to change, that we could rebuild. But she was right. She wasn't obligated to stay in this. She didn't owe me another chance. "I get it," I said, my voice quieter now. "I understand if you can't forgive me. I understand if you can't trust me again. But I need you to know that I'm not giving up. Not on you, not on us. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I can be the man you need." She looked at me for a long time, her face unreadable, before finally letting out a slow breath. "I don't know what's going to happen, Jason," she said, her voice breaking just slightly. "But I can't keep living like this. I can't keep living in a relationship that's falling apart because of my own fears. You have to make a choice, too. You have to decide if this is something worth fighting for. I'm not going to be the only one doing the fighting." I nodded, my heart heavy with the weight of her words. "I won't give up," I said, my voice firm now. "But I can't do this alone." Susan stared at me for another long moment before finally breaking the silence. "I don't know what comes next, Jason, but I think we need space. I need space." It felt like a knife to the chest, but I knew it was the only way forward. "I'll give you space," I said quietly, stepping back. "But I'll be here when you're ready." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know when that will be." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of the room, more lost than I had ever been. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know if we could ever fix this, if we could rebuild what had been broken. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let it go without giving it everything I had. The road ahead wasn't clear, but it was the only road I had left. It had been weeks since Susan and I had reached that point of no return. I had given her the space she needed, but the silence between us had only deepened. Every attempt to reach out felt futile, as if we were both drifting further apart with each passing day. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I kept telling myself that I could fix this, that I just needed more time, more effort. Time and effort. That's all it took, right? But nothing prepared me for what came next. The whole situation with Clive Adams had always been there, lurking in the background. I had always suspected something was off about him, but the full weight of it didn't hit me until a few weeks ago. I had overheard a conversation between Susan's coworker, Tanya, and another colleague at the grocery store one afternoon. They were talking in hushed tones, as if they didn't want anyone to hear. But I did, and from that conversation, I pieced together something that I could never unsee. Clive was the one who had been with Susan. I had known, deep down, that something had been off. The late nights she spent at the office, the random meetings she had with Clive, the way she started to pull away from me emotionally. But I had never imagined it would be Clive, of all people. He was the charming, smooth-talking guy in the office, always with a smirk on his face, the one who seemed to know how to push everyone's buttons just the right way. He was a master manipulator, and apparently, he had manipulated Susan into something neither of us had anticipated. The worst part? Susan had denied it to my face, denying even the slightest hint of anything beyond a professional relationship. She swore there was nothing between them, that I was just paranoid, but deep down, I could tell she was hiding something. And now I had the proof. That night, I confronted Susan about it. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I had to know the truth. She was sitting in the living room, flipping through a magazine when I walked in. The moment she saw my face, her eyes flickered with unease. She knew something was coming. "What's wrong, Jason?" she asked, her voice tentative. I didn't waste any time. "Clive," I said, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "Tell me about Clive." She froze. The color drained from her face. She didn't need to say a word. Her silence spoke volumes. "You've been lying to me, haven't you?" I continued, my chest tight with a mixture of fury and hurt. "All this time, you've been hiding something from me. You've been with him, haven't you? You've been with Clive." Susan's face crumpled. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't speak. She just stood there, frozen, unable to meet my gaze. The truth was too much to deny. I had broken her defenses, and now she was faced with the reality of her actions. "I never meant for it to happen," she whispered, her voice shaky, her words laced with guilt. "It was just a mistake. I don't know how it happened, Jason. I never meant to hurt you." I couldn't speak. The words were stuck in my throat, lodged there like a stone. I had suspected, but hearing it from her lips, hearing her admit it, broke me. All the trust we had built, all the promises we made, shattered in that moment. "I'm so sorry," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted this. It was just a moment of weakness, and I regretted it the second it happened. I swear, I never meant to hurt you." I shook my head, my mind reeling. "And you expect me to just accept that? To just forgive you for this? After everything we've been through, you did this to me? You did this to us?" She reached out to me, her hands trembling. "Jason, please. I don't know what to say. I never wanted to betray you like this. I love you. I'm sorry, so sorry." I stepped back, putting space between us. "You love me? You love me?" I repeated bitterly. "You don't even know what that word means anymore, do you? Because if you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have let it get this far. You wouldn't have let him into our lives." Susan collapsed onto the couch, her hands covering her face. "I've messed everything up. I've ruined everything, Jason. I don't know how to fix it." I couldn't bear to look at her anymore. The betrayal, the lies, it was too much. "I don't know if you can," I said softly, my heart heavy with grief. "I don't know if we can fix this." It felt like an eternity passed before either of us spoke again. The silence in the room was suffocating, the weight of her confession pressing down on me like a vice. And then, the words spilled out of me, words I had been holding back for so long. "Clive told me everything. He confessed to me. He told me how it happened. How you two did this behind my back. How he made you feel like you needed him more than me. And you let him." Susan looked up at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You've spoken to Clive?" I nodded slowly. I had to hear it from him. He admitted everything. And you know what the worst part is? He's not even sorry. He's the same manipulative bastard he's always been. He's been using you, Susan, just like he's used every other person in his life. Susan shook her head. "No, Jason, it wasn't like that. It wasn't." She broke off, her voice faltering. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. I thought I was the one who was supposed to protect us. I thought I was the one who was supposed to be enough. But here I am, left holding the pieces of a marriage I thought was strong. And now I'm left with this. Susan stood up, taking a tentative step toward me, her hands reaching out. "Jason, please. Don't do this. Please don't leave me." I backed away, my eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can stay. I don't know if I can live with this. You've broken something inside me that I'm not sure I can ever fix." Her face crumpled again, and she stepped back, her body racked with sobs. "I'm so sorry, Jason. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. I love you so much." But the words fell on deaf ears. I had heard it all before. I had given her everything. But now I didn't know if I could trust her again. How could I? How could I trust the woman who had betrayed me with the one person I had warned her about? I walked toward the door, my heart heavy with the realization that the love we once shared had been torn apart, piece by piece. "I don't know what's next for us, Susan. I don't know if there's a future for us anymore." I looked at her one last time, my voice low and final. "I need time. We both do." And with that, I stepped out of the door, leaving behind the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. The woman I thought I could trust. I didn't know where I was going or what would happen next. But for the first time in my life, I knew one thing for sure. I was alone. And somehow, that felt like freedom. It had been 2 months since that night, the night I left. The night everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty shattered like glass. Since then, I'd been living in a small apartment on the outskirts of town, one that barely felt like a home, but was a refuge from the memories that clung to the house I once shared with Susan. The apartment was stark, bare, nothing more than the essentials. A bed, a couch, a kitchen table. I didn't want to fill the space with things I didn't need, not yet. I didn't even unpack most of my boxes. The only thing that really felt like mine was the stack of legal documents I'd been working on. Work had become my lifeline, the one thing that I could cling to without question. At least in my career, I was still someone, still in control. But the control I once had in my personal life was gone. I still couldn't shake the feeling of Susan's words, her sobs echoing in my ears, telling me she loved me, begging me not to leave. Every time I thought about going back, about trying to fix things, my mind would go back to Clive, back to the betrayal, and I'd pull away again. I hadn't heard from Susan in weeks. She sent the occasional text, but they were always short, always businesslike. How's Connie doing? I hope you're doing well. I know things are complicated, but please let me know if you need anything. At first, I couldn't bring myself to respond. And when I did, it was brief, nothing beyond what was necessary. My heart wasn't ready to forgive, and a part of me didn't know if it ever would be. I spent most of my time working, filling my days with long hours at the office. I had thrown myself into my cases, anything to keep the gnawing emptiness at bay. Some nights, I'd go out with Steve or a few other guys from work, just to drown out the silence of the apartment. We'd grab drinks, share a few laughs, but the moment I got home, it all came flooding back, the emptiness, the loneliness. A couple of months passed like this, quiet, detached, as though I was going through the motions of life without ever truly living it. And then one day, my boss called me into his office. "Jason, I've got a proposition for you," Richard said, his voice as smooth as ever. "How would you like to head back to headquarters? We've got an opening for a senior position. The pay's good. It's a chance to get back in the game, manage some big contracts. I think you're ready." I'd been expecting this call for a while, but something about it felt different now. The words he spoke were everything I had worked for. Success, stability, career advancement. But for the first time, they didn't excite me. "Thanks, Richard," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I appreciate it really. But I'm not sure I'm ready to go back to headquarters yet. I've been doing well here." He raised an eyebrow. "Jason, don't tell me you're thinking about staying in this quiet little corner of the world. You've got more potential than this. You know that." I didn't respond right away. I was thinking about the life I had left behind, about the choices I had made. "I'll think about it," I said finally, standing up. "Let me talk to some people first, and I'll get back to you." Richard gave me a nod, though I could tell he wasn't completely satisfied with my answer. But he didn't push. He didn't need to. I walked out of his office and straight to my car. As I drove, I couldn't shake the thought of headquarters, of stepping back into that fast-paced, demanding world I had once thrived in. It could be everything I ever wanted, or it could be another escape. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. I pulled it out, half expecting it to be Susan, but instead, it was a message from Lily, a woman I had met a couple of months ago through a mutual friend at a bar. "Hey, Jason. How've you been? Would you be up for grabbing a drink sometime? I'd love to catch up." It was an innocent message, but something about it caught my attention. Maybe it was the simple act of someone reaching out, offering a chance for something new, something different. I typed back a quick reply, setting up a time for the weekend. It had been so long since I had done anything that wasn't work or weighed down by the past. Maybe it was time to stop letting the past control my life. The weekend came quickly, and I met Lily at a small cafe near the park. She was easy to talk to, funny, and smart. Everything I needed to get out of my head for a while. We talked about our work, our lives, and just enjoyed the quiet moments. It wasn't like the fast-paced world I had been used to with Susan, but it was refreshing in its own way. I didn't have to be anyone other than myself. As the evening wore on, I found myself laughing more than I had in a long time. For the first time in months, I felt something inside me stir, something I hadn't felt since before everything with Susan exploded. "I'm glad you reached out," I said to Lily, smiling across the table. I didn't realize how much I needed this. She smiled back, a little playfulness in her eyes. "I'm glad I did too. I think you need a lot more of this, taking a break, enjoying life. You've been working yourself to the bone. You deserve some peace." I looked at her, realizing that in just a few hours, she had managed to remind me of something I had forgotten: how to breathe, how to enjoy the simple moments in life, instead of always pushing forward. A few weeks later, I made my decision. I accepted the position at headquarters. It was time to move on from the ghost of my past. I was still carrying the weight of everything that had happened, but now, I was ready to do it on my own terms. Susan still hadn't reached out, and part of me still wanted to fix things, to go back to what we had, but another part of me knew that it wasn't possible. Not right now. Maybe not ever. I had to learn to let go. In the weeks that followed, Lily and I saw each other more often. It was slow, simple, and unforced. We didn't rush into anything, but I found myself enjoying the company. And as for Susan, I thought of Connie often. I missed her. I missed being a part of her life. But I had to accept the reality that she wasn't my daughter, and Susan had to figure out what she needed. I couldn't fix her mistakes for her anymore. One night, after a long day of settling into my new role at headquarters, I walked past the park where Lily and I had first met. I stood there for a while, watching the sunset, letting the quiet of the world around me settle into my bones. I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't sure where this road would take me, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. I was learning to let go of the anger and bitterness, learning to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally beginning to move on. I stood there a little longer, feeling the weight of everything I had left behind slowly slip away. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was finally ready to build something new. And this time, I wasn't alone.